God of War Ragnarok had no small task following up the 2018 reboot, which is an absolute masterpiece, and was a strong contender for Game of the Generation. But what developer Santa Monica Studio have delivered with Ragnarok may just be the new pinnacle of third-person action games. Ragnarok picks up the adventure several years on, with everyone's favourite trio. The god-slaying god-dad with communication issues, Kratos, his precocious, prophecy-obsessed son, Atreus, and the disembodied head of know-it-all, Mimir. They're trying to survive through Fimbulwinter, a long, brutal winter that precedes Ragnarok, the Norse end-of-days prophecy that foretells the death of many gods and eventual rebirth of the world. Cue our heroes heading off to try and fight their fate and stop the prophecy from coming to pass. If you missed out on the first game, this does have a welcome wrap-up of the story so far. But do yourself a favour and go play the first one, because this is very much a direct continuation. So much so that after the first few hours, I was left feeling like this was a sequel that was perhaps playing things a bit safe. Gunganir in my head, I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on any massively new or different mechanics at first. It wasn't anything I was upset about, mind you. More of the same masterfully weighty, visceral, hyper-violent combat and over-the-top boss fights, all balanced to near perfection with brilliant Metroidvania-like exploration and environmental puzzles in fantastical realms, with those light RPG mechanics to trigger all those reward centers of my brain that wants to see number go up. Not to mention more powerful performances.
Just trust me, you'll want to.
You have broken my trust.
Epic story and a captivating one-shot delivery of the entire adventure. Just give me more of all of that, and I'm a happy god-slaying camper. But as I delved further into the sprawling 30+ hour campaign, it managed to continually surprise me with new wrinkles to the combat, new perspectives to the story, and cinematic set-piece moments that had my jaw being ripped off my face and smashed through the floor into the basement. Annoyingly though, most of the new and interesting things to talk about fall firmly into spoiler territory. But in the interest of being spoiler-free, I'm just gonna leave those things for you, dear gamers, to discover on your own. Outside of spoiler territory though, the combat has been refined in subtle but significant ways. Both your icy Leviathan axe and flamey Blades of Chaos can now be charged up to imbue them with extra flaminess or iciness. They also apply much clearer status effects on enemies and now complement each other, so you'll do more damage with ice attacks on an opponent who's just been immolated, or vice versa. New attacks can also now be unlocked with XP, some of which can then be boosted further once you've used them enough. I liked how these actually showed you how many times you've used them, as I'd often find I was totally neglecting to use certain moves, reminding me to actually learn the combo. Meanwhile, each piece of gear now has a specific bonus or perk attached to it, while shields also provide some different playstyles, some needing more precise timing but providing powerful counters, others letting you turtle up more, while also offering their own unique attacks. All of that combined with things like different options for powerful runic attacks, temporary buffs, and an amulet you can fill with a wide range of perk-filled gems, all leads to a much greater opportunity for build crafting, and you'll definitely want to use all the tools at your disposal. The combat is tough, and will quickly punish sloppy button mashing and poor timing, but will reward you for mindful play, encouraging you to consider each and every move. Tougher enemies can destroy you in just a few hits, so making sure to time your blocks, parries and dodges, and not get too ambitious with your combos is essential. Cleverly, most of the truly controller-snappingly hard battles are optional fights off the beaten path for those that want the challenge. But even so, playing on the default Give Me Balance option threw up more than a few death screens for me. The combat still feels great though. Every hit lands with satisfying weight and crunch. I love doing big damage with the axe, swapping to the blades for some quick crowd control, knocking enemies into the air for a comically long time, and yanking them around to my whims. It's endlessly satisfying. And beating those hard battles always made me puff out my chest and feel like the badass that Kratos is.
Good riddance, you feckless ball bag!
The story hits just as hard as the combat too. The excellent writing and performances give all these gods and larger-than-life characters a huge amount of humanity. Despite the mythological and fantastical setting, the characters are all driven by very relatable desires and emotions. There's a real depth to all of them. There's no black and white, good guy versus villain story here. Everyone's motivations feel justified and reasonable, even if we find ourselves having to fight against them, which gives all those encounters so much more weight. And while there's plenty of tearjerker dramatic moments and fist-pumping triumphs, there's a surprising amount of humor to it all too.
Oh, Cindy, you sodding bastard!
I legitimately laughed out loud on several occasions, and especially enjoyed how Kratos' deadpan and surly nature bounces off some of the more jovial characters.
You're not gonna wipe your feet, are you? Okay then, your bedrooms are there, the kitchen is just over there. Anybody need a snack? Kratos? Snack?
I do not need a snack.
I also love how the story isn't afraid to let things play out naturally and not feel rushed. It's not all action and quips, with plenty of quiet moments that let us in on what the characters are feeling, and let us really feel like we're on this journey with them. It's the kind of epic, expansive, and yet intimate story that really shows off the strengths and opportunities of storytelling in games. In fact, pacing throughout the entire game is spot on. For all the frenetic action, there's an equal amount of calmer exploration, with the world full of side quests, puzzles, and nooks and crannies to delve into at your discretion, letting you cool off between fights. And I love the way characters chatter and fill the time with interesting stories and world building.
Weird that Thimble Winter doesn't always make it winter.
In Midgard it does, but as you can see, the effects here appear far more gaseous in nature.
And speaking of the worlds, the amount of detail in them is absurd. Around almost every bend, I found myself slow panning over a new vista, or marveling at little things like how light was shining through a cave. That no cuts, one camera shot style is used brilliantly too, with fantastic direction that pulls us in unexpected ways at times, but always focuses on what's most important to the story. It's just a stunning looking game, all while running like a dream. Playing on PS5 in performance mode with high frame rate enabled is a sight to behold and a joy to play. It's just a remarkably stable looking game too. There's no visible pop-in or level of detail changes, and nary a jaggy to behold. And it's all backed by a fantastic score from composer Bear McCreary for an end result which regularly puts blockbuster films to shame. As mentioned, I played on PS5, but it is cross-generational. So while I can't talk about how it looks on PS4, there are a few elements that I think are held back by it being cross-gen. Mostly just lots of slow climbing through gaps or up walls to cleverly mask loading that I imagine the PS5 would have no trouble with. Not deal breakers by any means, but certainly reminders of last generation design. If I had any other minor criticisms, I wasn't a huge fan of the user interface. There's a few too many menus stacked on menus that felt clumsy to navigate. And they're just small nitpicks in what is a truly spectacular experience. God of War Ragnarok is hands down one of the best action games, and it tells one of the most epic stories you'll ever see. It sets a new benchmark of what big budget AAA gaming can be, and like its predecessor, it's earned a place in the pantheon of gaming masterpieces. Play.
You seem like a calm and reasonable person. Are you? A calm and reasonable person.
If the moment calls for calm.